My name is William Walter Runsabove. I am a Northern Cheyenne, Ogallala, Lakota, Udeshana, Nakota, Sutayo, Northern Cheyenne. From 3 different reservations. I'm enrolled in Lame Deer, Montana. I was born and raised in Fort Peck Reservation, and my last name comes from Pine Ridge, South Dakota. So the traditional Native American flute, it's been around for years, centuries, or since time immemorial. It's been a useful tool for people, in the Plains people, and there's a lot of different stories. Every tribe has their own origin story or origin of this instrument, of the traditional flute. And I was always fascinated as a young boy to when flute players would play their flutes. They would sing along with they'd sing along with their flutes. Or it was always fascinating to hear a flute player. And I grew up listening to native flutists such as like Kevin Locke or Robert Tree Cody, Vasquez, just to name a few, and sometime and then down in Lame Deer, in the amongst the Cheyennes, late Lee, Uncle Lee Lone Bear was a flute player, and Uncle Trees, Ogallala, Lakota, speaker, Cheyenne speaker, Kevin Locke, Lakota. And so it was always interesting, to go to hear a flute players, the differences and similar things, and but the one thing that was cool is that they all had the same instrument, and it was just the style that they did, style of play, style of songs and things like that. And so as a young boy, I was always fascinated, and I can remember, when I was born in 1983, I can remember right around maybe 86, 87, somewhere around there. I was really young, and I remember my first experience with a native flute, and I can remember being around family members and play one of the flute players playing for our family, and I always remember that, and I was always fascinated with those kinds of songs. There's a word that we say, and it just describes, the wind instrument, or the wind song. The people I mentioned, when I was growing up, we spent a lot of time dancing, going to different powwows, going to different celebrations, and along the way, my parents, and it's a lot like what I do now with my own family, my own children. But my parents, my dad, my mom, my dad was a well-known singer, late Bill Runsabove. He was a well-known singer, song composer, and he would sing with various drum groups, and real popular with singing. And my mom, she was very instrumental with the medicine dress dance coming this way. And so our travels throughout the United States and Canada, we met a lot of people along the way, from different reservations and different places like that. We met a lot of people, and they became extended family. And it was real. It's a serious, when we say this is my brother, or this is my sister, this is my auntie, this is my uncle, and there's no blood relation there. It's a serious. We take it very serious. Adoption, adopted family, things like that. That's what you'll hear. This is my adopted family, and but we don't say that. This is my auntie. This is my uncle, and so because of my dad's relationships with a lot of people from all over Indian country, I got to know some really cool people, in Tree Cody and Kevin Locke, and they were always there. They were dancers as well, singers as well, and even up to because of my dad's travels, I got to meet Redbone,
Nice.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, and so it in a way, in Indian country, you can call them rock stars. Like my dad's group, my dad's singing is known as comparable to popular rock stars and rock songs or any kind of popular songs. When I grew up, like when I was explaining earlier, and I grew up with these people in my life, you had singers and song makers, and so when it came to the flute, they would sit there and they would play their flute, and or they always carried their flute with them, or it was always with them with their outfit, their regalia, and so they would take things like that, and we'd be sitting around, getting ready for a powwow, or we'd be sitting around socializing, and somebody would bring out their flute, and I would always see people come up to, Uncle Tree, and it'd be like, hey, we need you to come play for a wedding, or so and so is getting married. All right, yeah, I'll be there. Nowadays we call them gigs,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but they always got asked, and they would always go play. So I'd always away from the power. You go away from the power, away from the camp. You go to another person's camp, and they'd be playing these songs, and so I was always fascinated like that, learning these kinds of things, and so those are some of the things I remember, and we were always. I never thought about it back then, but when I'm older now, now that I have my own family, and then the hospitality and things like that we were taught, was that if you come into it's an old saying, if you come into our home and you leave hungry, that's your fault, not ours. As I say, is the world's way of connecting people. Music connects all walks of life. Different genres. And when it comes to with Native music, we have many different types. We have traditional, ceremonial, celebration music. We have the ceremony music. We have naming songs. We have prayer songs. We have different songs for different types of occasions, and there's always a song for any situation. There's uplifting songs, there's memorial songs, and when we sing, a lot of times you'll see some singers or see people that sing, they can sing it without a drum, or they can sing with a drum. And the drum is our heartbeat. The drum is what keeps our rhythm, and the tempo and things like that. But the drum is very powerful. It's a powerful instrument, and it's been known to scare people that don't have that understanding. And with the drum, it's the heartbeat, and I don't mean to sound like cliche or anything, but it is the heartbeat. It represents a lot of things. It represents strength and unity. It represents forward progress. It represents celebrations. It represents a lot of good things. There's nothing negative about the drum. There's nothing negative about it. But when people don't understand the drum aspect of it, I can see where the fear can come into play of not knowing why we have a drum. I mean, you sit here if you listen to a drum, that drum will take you to places that they call it the old man, and it's made out of animal, elk, deer, buffalo. It's made out of these four-legged beings that gave their life for us to use, and a lot of our singing, a lot of our teachable moments have come from four-legged people, and even the winged creatures, the water creatures. There's a lot of things that were taught to us by these four-legged relatives, and so to take a life with with any of these four-legged beings, we give them the thanks, and we always appreciate that, and because it's allowing us to continue on things that were taught to us. So in the earlier times, we had the drums carried on our singing, helped us, get that sound out there to the creation, on Mother Earth, and so when we have these different songs and stuff like this, we have songs that talk about war deeds, war stories, talking about hunting stories. We talk about love stories, love songs, breaking up, with the spouse, or things like that. There's all kinds of songs, go home songs, different types of songs that we have, and like I always tease around too. We even have songs about Walmart. We have those types of songs, and so. But modern day times we carry those on, but in the past, growing up and being around these gentlemen, these singers and song makers, I didn't realize how lucky I was, to be around it. It was a very, very simple time back then. There are certain people that hold and carry certain rights. They obtain certain rights to sing certain songs and to play certain songs. There's certain things that we don't talk about. There's certain things that we don't try and share. And so when we're being brought along to learn, when we're being brought along to be taught these things, these are some of the things that we like. Some teachers or some mentors, they don't have to go there, because like if you were kind of like brought up in that way, you would know that when somebody just quits talking all of a sudden about something, that's something that they don't share, or so it's and it's not in our nature to pry at what it is that they're trying. We don't do that. It's just we're not meant to hear it, and we're not meant to be taught it, so we don't pry. And so. But when it comes to these singings and these songs, just like modern day music, like you hear a song on the radio, and right now you're like, it hits your soul, it hits you right in your soul, and it makes you feel good, and you learn about it. I can remember being a young boy growing up, and we're at a powwow. And one of my favorite times at a powwow was before Grand Entry would happen. They would all the drum groups used to have warm-up songs they would sing, which meant that they would have a practice song before Grand Entry, just to get a warm-up in, just to shake off the cobwebs or whatever, and they would sing, and that was always kind of like it was the drum group's way of getting ready for that session. And I can remember getting ready for Grand Entry, and I heard this song. I just heard this song like that, and I started dancing at camp, and I was like, holy cow, this is, and in our way, we have lead singers, it was lead singers, and I heard this lead and I was like, man, who is that? It sounded so powerful to me, and it sounded cool at the same time. So I was dancing at camp and I was like, I got to go see who this is. And my mom, no, get back here, get ready, and you should know who that is. My mom, saying stuff, and I'll be right back. Not listening. I ran up to the arbor, and I went to the drum group that was singing, and I started recognizing, as I got closer, and here was my dad's group, and I remember hearing my dad, like really hearing my dad for the first time. My dad had a beautiful voice, big, strong, beautiful voice, and he made a lot of songs, and I would dance around the house. Well, Dad, sing, when I was a little guy, Dad, sing, and he would sing me a sneak up song. So it resonated with me, and it's like that, and people talk about those moments. They talk about, did you hear that song? Did you hear that song at warm up time? Holy smokes, they talk like that. They talk about it, and I wasn't the only one that went running up there. There was a crowd of people standing around the drum watching them. So that music, that singing, that voice, and that drum, when it connects, it turns into a very powerful moment, and that's the Creator's way of showing you that sing to me. He likes to hear songs, and that's one of the coolest forms that I ever heard when I heard drum group and voices come together. I was always a fan of the men that played the flute, and I never intended or planned to be a flute player. I just liked when people would play. It was really captivating. I grew up, amongst the power circle. I grew up an athlete, so the people that know me, they know I like to laugh. I love to laugh, and I like to tease, and I like to be teased. And it's laughter is the best medicine. You laugh all the time, and it's always, there's always that balance. I befriended a lot of people, both native, non-native, and growing up in Wolf Point, there wasn't really much. It was a white school on a reservation growing up. Nowadays, it's considered more of a reservation school, but we didn't have a whole lot of cultural interactions, like not how you see today. Like if you go to School District 2, there's more cultural interactions today than there was when I was growing up in Wolf Point on a reservation. I learned a lot of stuff from my white friends, such as, like you went to the way they prayed, and then to how we prayed, and that was probably one of the coolest things I could have ever done, because I got to know my, a lot of my friends' faith side, and then you can kind of see where they come from, and how they teased and joked with you. I would say it's part of our spirituality. Yeah.
I guess not religion. So
Yeah.
we wouldn't really call.
Yeah.
We would call it spirituality.
Yeah. And so so being teased and learning to tease and all this and that, at Wolf Point, you have certain cliques and athletes, and the studious people, and then the musical people, and then the people, what do they say nowadays? Meh, the meh people, So yeah, meh, yeah,
sure.
yeah. So, but like, people that just did enough to get by, and so when I would get dropped off by my mom, she'd take me to school, and I'd be like, I don't want to get dropped off here, where the athletes go, the doors that they go through, because it was like a red carpet kind of a thing every day, getting dropped off with the athletes because everybody had to one up each other. I did have a quiet confidence. People would say it was cocky arrogance,
Sure.
but if you're confident in what you can do, I mean, people can't take that away from you. But to come off of arrogant, yeah,
Yeah.
and people, people judge, and it's sad that people judge. But but yeah, I wouldn't I would never, I would hardly ever get dropped off at that door. And then I never went to the meh door, because they didn't know how to classify you, like if you don't talk to them or whatever, if you just want to be left alone. So I always got dropped off at the musical door, where the choir kids hung out, or where the band kids hung out. And and a lot of my friends were all band kids, clarinet, saxophone, trumpet, drummers, things like that. And they would call me, all the adjectives that you describe an athlete, and I would call them all the adjectives that you would describe a band kid,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
so
I
they,
appreciate that.
yeah,
Yeah.
they would, so we got to know each other very well, and I got called a dork by them, and I would call them nerd, and then pretty soon we just said nerds to each other, what's up, nerd, and so I would tease the crap out of them about playing in a band, and I loved it that, because we spent so much time getting to know each other growing up, that, I mean, you knew what was taboo not to say, and what was, what was good to say, and it was always laughter with us. It was always funny. And I told him, I started teasing him, and I said, you know what you guys need to do is, when I come in, I'm the only athlete that comes in this door. I'm the only one that acknowledges you guys. And I said, so when I start coming in, you guys need to start playing my intro theme for me, and like right around that time, it was like Stone Cold Steve Austin, like it was that's the intro, the glass breaking. I was, so April 1st
When
comes
The Rock
around.
was a wrestler.
Yeah, yeah. And April 1st comes around, and I get off at the door, the musical door, and I come walking in, and pretty soon all you heard was, the Ides of March themes. I heard Darth Vader theme, I heard, and they were really making fun of me, like, and so I was like, darn it,
So
you guys.
these kids they knew the wall was coming in the
Yep.
door, and
Yep.
so they decided to give you your own theme
Yeah.
music as
Yeah.
you were coming, because you
Yep.
were the athlete that was actually coming in the other door.
Yep. And the teachers caught on real quick. Oh,
we know
Walter's here.
And we,
The teachers, it was embarrassing, like a cool embarrass,
sure.
and so there's a couple of times where I was tardy on purpose, and you'd stand around the corner. The truant officer, he'd be sitting there, and he'd have to, what's your excuse? What's your excuse? All these kids coming in with their excuses and stuff, and he had a convex mirror outside of his office, and he would see how many there'd be kids lined up, to get their tardies. And then when I started getting tardy, because they fixed me, the band kids, they got me good. And so late Sonny Archdale, he was the truant officer, and he would sign your slips. And he saw me, he looked in the mirror, he saw me, he says, Walter Runsabove from Fraser, Montana, get in here, and I would take cuts in front of everybody else.
Did he really sound like the powwow announcer?
Yeah, yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. He sounded like a powwow announcer because he knew I did that, and he would say, if you can name this song. He always had music playing all the time in his office, 50s, 60s music generally, and if you can name this song, I'll let you go. I won't count you tardy. This won't go against your whatever. And so I sit there and I listen, I'm like, man, that's Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, or that's Dion and the Belmonts,
Oh, that's cool.
I named all his songs, and so I never was tardy. I'd go to class,
Right.
So, anyways, you get into varsity action and contests, and you have the bands playing and stuff like that, and I just go tease them, and orchestrate, from the floor or whatever. Since I was growing up, Uncle Tree Cody, would come around to different powwows and stuff, and I'd always ask him to play a certain song when I was little, since I was very little. I'd say, Lexi, Uncle, play me, that Coco Pally song, and he was, he'd play it, for me, Coco Pally Wandering song. He played on his flute, and I was always, I don't know if I was fascinated because Uncle has a missing finger, and and he plays his flute, but he played that song all the time ever since I was little growing up. Uncle, play that song. Uncle, play that song, and I don't know how he ever got tired of me, or not get tired of me, asking him all the time to play that song, and he was always patient with me. He'd play it all the time. Sometimes he'd play it twice in a row, and so we were in Fort Belknap. We were at Fort Belknap Powwow, and it was in July, and he was there, and this is the first time I seen him in a long time. And he comes up and he says, "Nephew," he goes, I got something for you. Meet me at the camp. Meet me back at camp." I said, "Okay." And so I went back, and we were sitting there like that, and he brings out his flute. And in my mind, I was, oh yeah, my uncle's gonna, just like old times, my uncle's gonna play me this song, and so, and he does. He plays that Coco Pala Wandering song, and then I was sitting there, I was enjoying it, and I whispered to, you know, Cassie, she was my girlfriend at the time. We were just together. It wasn't my wife yet, but I whispered, to her. I said, "This is Coco Pally Wandering song," and she goes, I said, "Listen to this." And so we were sitting there like that, and he was playing, and then when he was done, with that flute, um, he handed it to me 4 times, like that, and on that fourth one, I took it, and that was the most sincere, genuine way that he got me started. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had no idea the responsibilities. I had no idea, you know, what I just did, what just happened. All I knew was the significance of it, of how he did that. And so he played me that song, Coco Pala Wandering song. And so I learned as a young flute player the history and the stories of Coco Pally, the history and stories of the Lakota way of flute, the history and stories of the Cheyenne way of flute. I learned all these different things, and so, but I was deathly afraid of that flute. Like, I was afraid of it, and there was power that came with it, and there's power that's still with it. That flute that I have, that he gave me, and I was so nervous, and there's a lot of pressure. I felt a lot of pressure, and it was something that I never thought I would do or be as a flute player. I never thought that. And so when I sat there realizing what just happened, in my mind I was like, "Oh crap." what what the heck, what happened? Yeah. Yep, yep. And so
I did this to myself, right?
Yep. And so um went on to college, and I took my flute with me everywhere, and
is that kind of what's expected? I mean, is
yep,
that, yeah?
yep,
Okay.
it goes with you. It's the instrument, or it's whatever that holds that power. That's what chooses, and
Yeah,
and
good.
and
Okay.
and so
It's an interesting way to think about it. Like,
yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
chooses you.
yeah, it
And
chooses you.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Point, encouragement by my dad, encouragement by my mom, you know, from July all the way up until November, late November, December that year when I was sitting in college. It was right before, you know, I got cussed up in basketball practice, feeling down, you're away from home. Um, and I was always taught when you get like that, you recenter yourself. You recenter yourself, and you recenter yourself by putting yourself in at a time where it was your strongest, and it helps you build yourself back up, and you ground yourself. And so I sat down on, I found a nice warm spot, in the dorms, imitating it to be Mother Earth, grounding yourself. Because, where I was at, it was cold, it was, snowy and depressing, windy, all those things. And I was missing home at that time. And my comforting, when I looked at my flute, it brought me a lot of comfort. And up from July up until that point, I never played the flute. I never bothered. I just had it with me. So thinking back on the teachings and stuff, and the way that my Uncle Tree did this, he played that song for me because he wanted me to learn that song, and then at a future time to play it back for him. And then once that happened, then it was under his mentorship. He would say, okay, you're ready to play, or you're ready to do this you're ready to play for other people.
Yes.
So I spent a lot of time by myself learning how to play this instrument, and I was really terrible. I was really I couldn't coordinate my breathing with my finger placement.
There's no sheet music. It's all by.
Yep, creativity.
Yep.
And I couldn't get.
You still got to blow it in there correctly,
Yeah.
and it's still got and that's a whole art form in and of itself.
Yep. Because if you don't have the right breathing with the right coordinating with the finger placements, you can make that flute sound pretty sketchy because of the way it screeches, the way that squeaky. So I was I sat by myself a lot. I didn't want anybody to hear me. Nervous and scared. I didn't want people to hear me because I didn't want them to say, "Man, that's terrible," or "Man, that's what are you doing? Do you even know what you're doing?" Those, a lot of self-doubt thoughts came raced through my mind. So, my roommate, he would come in, and I'd be playing in my dorm room by myself, and then he would come back home, and he'd hear me playing, and my ears started hurting as soon as I walked up the hallway. And he's a native from he's Blackfeet from Browning, and so teasing, and my ears started bleeding as soon as I walked in, and I heard this,
Oh, it's even worse because
yeah,
Blackfeet.
yeah, that hard teasing,
Yeah.
and we'd laugh, and then I tell him, man, he says, man, that song's ugly, that song's ugly. He teased me like that. It's like, well, I play like this because I'm playing for your future wife. Like I'm trying to court you for your future wife. This ugly song is gonna get you an ugly woman. Just tease it right back.
Squeaking in the door.
Squeaking along, and so I spent that whole year squeaking. I don't even know if you call it music playing or anything, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful to somebody, and that's,
it got there somehow.
Yeah, it got there somehow. And see that and that kind of falls into the woodpecker story. And because when somebody plays something, or when somebody sings something, and this person may not like it, this person may not, but it hits somebody somewhere. And so I just kept squeaking along that year, and then June came, and I got comfortable enough to play in front of family, and we were at our house in Fraser, my mom and dad's house, and it was a real hot day, summer day, June, It was getting to be pretty warm, and it was like we didn't have air conditioning at that time. You know, no central air. You know, windows were open, doors were open. You know, but we didn't have air conditioning. I started playing. My dad was telling a story, and while he was telling a story, I was playing background music to it. You know, and he got done with his story. He's like, "Man, son," I was nervous. You know, I was scared because your family teases you. You know, in a good way. They tease you, and there was comical stories. There was a hunting story. There was a basketball story in the background music to the story. Yeah, and the more dramatic you got, the more dramatic I got with the and. I have to admit, there's like, you know, a lot of squeaking, and so because like I said, I squeaked that whole first year, and really because I was afraid of it, and I didn't put in the time to really, you know, to practice, you know, and so anyways, um, they were telling these stories. My dad's telling us, he got done telling his story, and then he's like, "Man, son, man, that sounds really good. You're doing good. Keep it up," you know. And then he leaves. He goes outside on the porch, and I continue playing. And my mom, "Man, son, oh my gosh, that sounds so good. You're doing so good. Oh my gosh, oh, you know." And then she leaves. She goes outside, and then I continue playing like that, and then all my aunties and my uncles, "Man, nephew, man, you know, sound really good. You know, that's a good song. You know." And then they left, you know, they were outside. And so I sat there in the living room still playing. And I was getting hot, you know, it's getting hot. I was sweating. So I went outside where everybody was at, and the listening to their stories out there. And laughter was all around, you know. And then so here I go out there and I start playing my flute like that. And then pretty soon my dad goes, "Man, son, what? That sounds really good. Man, you're doing a good job. Keep it up." And then he goes back inside. My mom does the same thing. "Ah, son, that sounds really good." Just, man, one by one, you know, they're all getting away from me, you know. So I sat there and I was like, man, I chased everybody away, you know, I was thinking about it. And then, man, I was really thinking about this. I was like, I should have never teased anybody in band, you know, I should have never teased them because I felt everything that they probably felt, you know, being teased and having that courage to be a band member, you know, an instrument player, you know, to be part of that, and not knowing the intelligence it takes to play a musical instrument. I started to understand the responsibilities that my Uncle Tree was talking about, and the significance of him giving it to me 4 times, because there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it, because you have the capability to make people feel good. You know, you have the capability to uh, completing a full circle of emotions for people, whether they be positive or negative, and it sets the mood, you know. And so I sat there after I chased everybody away, and our dog, you know, Rambo at the time, Joseph, you know, they were black labs and they liked to chase rabbits, and but my dog didn't even, he left, you know. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna figure this instrument out. So I started breathing, and I started with the whistle. You know, I whistle, get my whistle down, and then I started incorporating my voice into the whistle. You know, just using my voice, and so like if I could do that, then I can make different noises with the flute. And so I started coordinating my finger placement with the breathing, you know, and different things like that. And so I sat there outside by myself and I started playing, just started randomly playing, and then I started in my mind being creative of how I wanted certain notes to go or certain pitch and things like that. Anyways, I looked up, I saw this rabbit. This rabbit came in and he had his ears straight forward. And I locked eyes with this rabbit and I was playing to this rabbit. And his ears didn't move. And I was like, man, I got his attention. So I'm sitting there and playing. And mind you, he walked right past my dog who was laying on the ground, and he come right up and he got probably within about 10 feet of me and of our porch. And I was sitting there, playing, and then so that's how I came up with my first song, and for a rabbit's ears, and then for a rabbit's ears, yeah, and so that rabbit, gave me all the confidence I needed, uh, to be to play with confidence, to carry the flute with confidence, and so um, it was a humble reminder of how hard it was, and then the more I played, the more I understood, a lot of different things, and then the more I played, I started getting confident with playing, and then pretty soon I started remembering how Kokopelli Wandering Song went, and then I started playing that. I started learning how to put that to the flute, and then my Uncle Tree came out of nowhere. This one celebration we were at, and I had my flute with me, and I was ready, and it would probably have been about maybe 2 years after 2-3 years after that for a rabbit's ears, and I didn't play in anything yet, and then here Uncle Tree came out of nowhere, and I played him that song on the flute that he gave me, and after I played that song to that flute, my uncle was really happy, man, nephew, man, you did a good job, holy smokes, he learned that song, and Kokopelli Wandering Song, it's kind of a hard song, there's a lot of movement, a lot of finger movement action, and so after he told me that, showing the teacher what it is that you can do, or that what he taught you, you show him that, then he told me all the responsibilities. He told me everything after that point. And it was kind of crazy because everything I learned on my own was everything that he talked about. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it was like, I'm showing you this, you're going to learn this, you're going to show me this, and then I'm going to tell you, and we're going to see if it matches up what you learned. And so things that I taught myself, things that I learned on my own, he pretty much validated everything that I thought. And a lot of prayers went up, and am I worthy enough to play this? Am I worthy enough to be a flute player? Those kinds of things. And so when some of the stuff that he told me, there's certain things that you do and there's certain things that you don't do. And so one of the things he always said was, when you play this flute, it's a powerful instrument, and you always think of your significant other first, because if you don't, then things are going to happen. Or if you're playing for certain things, like a funeral or a wake or a memorial gathering or anything like that, you don't think of certain things. You think of the family. And one of the things he said is when people know that you're a flute player, they're going to ask you to do things, and it's your responsibility to fulfill them the best you can, or the best that you know how. And so so in a way, he gave me my rights to be able to play this instrument, because there's a lot of power that comes with it, but there are different flutes, the ones that I have. I have flutes from certain people that I look up to, and not just anything, it's just it certain things that I can do. Um, so all these things, like you learn, you know, like it taught me, it humbled me, and it taught me a lot of things. Even though we were playful teasing growing up, teasing all my band friends, to being humbled, with with a Native American flute. Um, and I know there's differences between the instruments and the native flute music, concert, yeah, those kinds of things. And then there's the ones that aren't tuned in to any keys. It's just that you have to, you know, uh, like on a regular flute, like if you cover the third hole down, and that's kind of like your harmony, part where everything flows. If you had that uncovered, it's just all you hear is the scale. So I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, with being creative. I never thought in a million years that I would show the person that got me started flute playing. I never thought I would show him anything, or like show him anything new, or teach him anything. And one of the things, and it kind of goes back, and to wrap up this story, when I got asked to play in the orchestra with Billings Symphony Orchestra, I never learned how to read sheet music. I never knew sheet music. And when I was taught how to read sheet music by Jim Cockey, the composer of these pieces, um, I had to learn, 4/4 measure. I had to learn half notes, whole notes, quarter note, whatever. I had to learn all that stuff in different pitches and things like that. It took me one whole month to learn those things. The more I learned it, the more I got into it, the more I doubted myself, because I never played with a live orchestra before.
Sure.
Never played with anybody before, but Jim, the composer, spent a lot of time teaching me, his piece, that this is how you're going to play. And then after he taught me this, and this is what's cool, and this can relate to every teacher out there. One of the coolest things he ever told me was, all right, you have a handle on it. It's like, yeah. So all right, now let's go through the flute part again. Let's do this. Let's get creative. Own it now. Make it your own. And so he taught me how he wanted it done. But then he says, now you own it.
Yeah.
You put your flair to it. And so that was one of the things I did. Was I was like, wow, because I was learning it from a non-native perspective, the way he wanted it done. And then he says, now you own it. Put your flair to it. So I threw little things in there, and it worked. It came out really good. And so for teachers to sit there and say, this is the way it is, this is how it is, you're not going to get far in teaching with students, because it's a lot of give and take. It's a lot of give and take. And the best teachers are the ones that learn from their students. And that's always been a cultural component of our upbringing. Well, my grandma, great grandma, and I always remember she was a funny lady. She's very loving and very knowledgeable. And she would say random things, like she would act like she didn't know. Grandma, how come this? I don't know. I'm just an old person. Like, oh, whatever. So come on, tell me. And it was basically saying, like, uh, I'm not gonna waste my breath because you're not gonna pay attention, kind of a thing. So they would say, I'm just an old person. She went from riding teams of horses to a buggy to a vehicle, and yeah, 80s. I was born in '83, and in the '80s, she still washed her clothes outside in the old time, washer and dryer, scrubbing and things like that. Yeah, and so there's, I mean, and knowledgeable Dakota speaker, uh, knew the Bible. Wawapi Washtave is her name, good book woman, and so she had all this knowledge, grandma, and but she would always, you know, grandson, what'd you learn in school today? What did they teach you today? And I'd share with them, you know, I learned English, malfunction, conjunction. Why I said love is a verb is because it can describe many things. It can help you with many things. And that's the culprit, and that's the main emphasis behind the flute. It's a love instrument. And that's why when we were taught these things, that's why they tell us to be careful of what you think of when you play. With great power comes great responsibility. And there's a reason why when you're shown these things, there's a reason why they tell you what to watch out for. It's not it's always crazy. They tell you, but then again, they don't share examples. They just tell you, because when it happens, if you don't follow that protocol, if you don't follow that, then you go through these experiences, and then it'll sit back and say, see, it has the positive and it has the negative. It does, but like the negative that comes out of it is the animosities and the jealousies and things like that. But the positives that comes out of it far outweigh the negatives. There's always the balance. It balances. I always approach it with a good heart. A good open mind, clear mind. And a lot of times, I'll pray or smudge everything, and but what allowed me to keep playing, is just the encouragement that I got from family members, and mainly my dad and my mom, and my wife, and then my children. I play around the house every now and then, and my children will. My son has one of my flutes in his room. My daughter has one of my flutes in her room. And so they play, and they do their thing. They're learning. And so Kokopelli, if you go to the southwest of our country, amongst those tribes down there, you will see this flute player. He has the headdress. He's equivalent. He's equivalent to, like, say, like in the the Dakota speaking people. He's equivalent to, say, Ikdomi, like a trickster. So it's equivalent like that.
He's a trickster.
Yeah.
Basically. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not.
But he's everywhere. See, like, and so if you think of wind, like, the wind's everlasting. So therefore, Kokopelli is everlasting. And there's a lot of different stories when it comes to Kokopelli.
Okay.
The one I was shared, it's different, but and a lot of the flute players, they all have this woodpecker story with it too. So they have that.
So they're
Yep.
kind of.
Yep. In that flute, like, it's his breath that makes the song. That wind that comes in to the flute that makes the song. That wind leaves the flute, and then the big wind picks it up and takes it across, takes it wherever the wind goes. That's where that song goes. That's how he travels, and he travels that way because he's constantly playing his flute. I've never not seen Coco Pelli not playing his flute. He's constantly playing his flute. There's always these images where he's and so that Coco Pelli Wandering song, that's the way Uncle Tree showed me, the way I play it. That's the story, and he's reached all corners of the earth. You know, different tribes, different nations. You know, Japan have flute songs. You know, China have flute songs. Korea's got flute songs. Over in India, you know, they all have these different flute songs. Even amongst the Greek, yep, amongst the Greeks, you know, it's all, they all have these flute songs, and they all have their origin stories of it. You know, so with that, you know, they have that wandering flute player. He's always wandering, you know, and the reason why he's wandering is because his song's always playing. It hasn't quit playing because of the wind's everlasting, you know. So that hits us. We'll have to insert him in there. Yeah. That hits the flute players, you know. That hits us, and that's an honorment for that purpose, for him. So. And it just shows, when people know those stories, it just shows the universal knowledge that they hold, and with the songs and things like that. Now, with the woodpecker, I'll use my flute as a demonstration here. This is cedar. This is a flute. Common material. Yeah. So this is a flute that my dad. I still have my zip tie on there from wearing one of these microphones at the concert. But this is a flute that my dad gave me, and this story that I'm going to share, woodpecker story. This is a well-known story, and it really can tie into modern day classrooms, modern day society. And we were told this story. I heard this story before I became a flute player. And now that I'm a flute player, it just makes, you know, all that much more sense. There was a time where they say that it was for men, because of the fact that there's certain things that women can do. There's certain things that men can do. The flute was one of them that it was only for the men. And the reason why is because women have that strength and that power, and they don't realize how powerful they are, or how powerful they can be. Us men, you know, like, we have to do things like with this flute, or with songs, or to show off, like, hey, I can dunk a basketball, you know, to do things to capture that attention from women. They didn't have to do these things. They didn't have to gain the attention of a man, because they're beautiful, strong, smart, powerful. They're creators, you know. The creators, the creation. They're the creation. They were hand selected by the Creator. Mother Earth grows plants, grows these trees, food, all these things, right? And you look at, like, it's snowing right now, and like that's what these plants need to grow. So like we're in the womb,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak.
Yeah.
And then the next life, when we pass on, we go to the other side of the camp. Like when we're born again, so to speak, with like Christianity way of thinking, right?
Right.
So we have those that way, but we go to the other side of the camp. We don't believe in like a heaven or a hell, but we believe in that other side of the camp, which is along the Milky Way, the galaxy, or that area right there. And we we believe ourselves to be star people. And this is kind of crazy because my daughter Abilene, I said, "What did you learn in school today?" This was a couple weeks ago. "What did you learn in school today?" "Oh, that we're all made of stardust." And I just kind of chuckled like that. And the way she said it was like,
oh, that's so interesting.
yeah, the way she said it was like, uh, that we're all made of stardust. Like it was like a aha moment for her. When in all reality, she's getting that teaching and that education, that knowledge when we go to our ceremonies. Because even at a funeral, we talk about these things. Like we go back to the stars.
Well, it's just
Mother Earth's fighting back. She's sick. And we can all relate to when our own moms are sick. Like it makes us worry, as yeah, makes us worry, makes the children worry. And it all goes back to just simple teachings of the flute with, you know, female and female roles and male roles. You know, this was a role of a male, of certain males. And there's stories where, you know, it was a courtship. It's a courtship instrument, and this young man tried everything he could to gain the attention of the particular girl, and she was not having it. She is not having it, you know. And um, so, you know, he had the best horses. He was the strongest warrior, you know, or the strongest young man. You know, he was the fastest. He was, you know, pretty popular. Didn't impress the young girl at all. And so when he went and prayed about it, prayed to the Creator about it, the Creator blessed him with a vision and said that you make your flute out of a certain wood, you know, cedar, and then you put a elk head, you know, on your flute, you know. And so he did. He carved it out, and then he was given songs, and he learned songs when he was out hunting. He the bugles were coming in, and he was sitting there listening, and then he would play that on his flute. And then he went back to where that young girl was at, and he was sitting over there, and she was over there, you know, doing her thing, and he was watching her from a distance, and he started playing that those elk noises. And then she looked up over at him like that. She walked over there. You know, that's in a nutshell. That's how that story. That's a Lakota story. In a nutshell, that's how that flute came to them. And the woodpecker, you know, everybody has their own voice. Everybody has their own song. Uh, and everybody is heard, and the song sounds good to at least one person in this world. But ultimately, when we sing, or we play the music, um, ultimately the Creator hears us. When we're afraid, or when we're worried, or when we need that spiritual guidance, and we lift our prayers up to the Creator, there's a lot of times where Creator just wants to hear you sing. There's a lot of times where He just wants to hear you play a song for Him. and you're thinking of the Creator, thinking of whatever it is that's bothering you. That's, in our language we say, I'm sending my voice, meaning I'm singing to you, I'm praying, and so when it come to Woodpecker was sitting there, in the spring, when everybody was full of life because spring came. Everybody's alive again. We made it through another winter, and so everybody's coming out of hibernation. Everybody's fixing up their nests, or their terrain. So Woodpecker was watching all of this. He was looking around at life all around him, lively. Elk was over here bugling around. The deer was over here, hollering around. The wolves, the coyotes, all the birds. Everybody was full of life. Birds are singing, the eagles, they're all singing, the hawks, the ravens. Everybody was all singing, and and as they were singing, enjoying their spring, Woodpecker started feeling bad. He's feeling sad because he kept trying to mimic the eagle. He kept trying to mimic the elk. He kept trying to mimic, all these beautiful noises, these beautiful songs that were being rendered right there. And then pretty soon, he was trying to mimic the meadowlark. And just when he would get that one song down, meadowlark would change his tune. And just when he got that song down, the meadowlark would change his tune again. And when he got that song down, meadowlark changed his song again. And he did that. That meadowlark did that 7 times. Changed his song 7 times. And Woodpecker, what? This guy has 7 songs. And then, all right, he flies over to this tree, and there's an elk there. And he's singing. And the Woodpecker tries to mimic him. And just when he got that song down, the elk changed his song. And the elk did that 7 times. And then pretty soon he went to this other tree, and there was a hawk sitting there trying to mimic his songs, and he changed his song when he got to know it. And he did that 7 times. So Woodpecker sat there defeated, very defeated, sitting there, had his head down. And this deer watches him like that. He comes walking up to him. He says, "Woodpecker, my friend, I saw you fly over there and listen to the meadowlark. I saw you fly over there and you listen to the elk. I saw you fly over here and you listen to the hawk. And what's going on?" And he turns around, and he's sitting on that tree. He turns around and he just goes, "Tree, I don't want to talk." And then that deer starts singing to him. And that Woodpecker, starts moving his shoulders, flaps his wings, makes him feel good. So he turns around and he says, "Thank you for noticing that I'm not feeling well. But I'm just sad." "Oh, why are you sad?" he said. "Because I tried to learn Meadowlark's song, and he knows 7 different songs. I tried learning the elk songs, and he knows 7 different songs. I tried learning the hawk I tried learning his songs, and he has 7 different songs. I don't have any songs. I don't have anything. I just, I don't know what to do. I can't. I want to contribute. I want to be like them and sing songs up to the Creator. I want to be like that. And the deer said, well, you are. You are like that. You're unique. You have your own song. And he said, play me a song, sing me a song. And he goes, I don't know any songs. Well, what can you do? He says, so that woodpecker turns and he starts hitting his head on a tree like that. Hits his head on that tree until he made a hole. And after he made that first hole, that deer said, man, that sounded so beautiful. Do it again. So he starts doing it like that. And he made that second hole. That deer, hey, come listen to this. The badger and the skunk and the porcupine, they all come up. Listen to this guy. He's just there. He makes that second hole. Doesn't that sound good? Man, that sounds really good. Where'd you learn that at? That woodpecker's just, the heck's going on here? Hey, come here. Come over here to listen to this guy. He sits there like that. He's really working like that, just constantly. And he makes that third hole. You know, the bear comes up, you know, and all these different, they all come up. They're all gathered around. They're all looking up at him. It's going like that, and he makes that fourth hole. He doesn't stop until he gets all the way to that last hole. He made 7 holes. So therefore he had 7 different songs. And he didn't know it. And then here that deer, after he got done making that last hole, that deer, man, thank you so much, woodpecker, my friend, thank you so much. You really blessed me. Thank you for singing to me. Thank you so much. And everybody all thanked him one by one. The woodpecker was confused looking at him, not knowing what he did. And then pretty soon, this cat, mountain lion or cougar, comes out of nowhere. I had to run over here really quick. I had to run over here. I heard music coming from over here. So who's singing to the Creator? And they all looked up at woodpecker. Him. That cougar said, man, that is really pretty. Pretty song. I heard it from way over there. Certain places. Ravines away, you know. I had to tell my relatives, I'm gonna follow that sound. I'm gonna go up to that sound, find that sound, see where it's coming from. And a woodpecker was just sitting there confused. And then these other cats came up. He says, is this where that song sound's coming from? Yeah, it's coming from him, that woodpecker. What's going on here? Is this yeah? You know, and woodpeckers like, yeah, I don't know what I did. And then pretty soon, that sounds really good. And then here the wolves come up next. I was over there, you know, further than the cats. I was over there and I had to tell my pack that we had to go to where that sound was at. I never heard a sound like that before. Who did that? This guy. He pointed at the woodpecker. You did that? It's your song. Yeah. Man, it sounded so beautiful from where we was at. We was over there across the lake. And it was a long ways away, you know. And then pretty soon, that eagle took off. Those hawks took off. All those birds took off. And they all started talking about the woodpecker. He had no idea what he did. So he turned around and he flew to a different tree and he looked at all the holes that he made from a different tree. He looked at everything like that. He looked at all the holes. And as he did that, he sat there and he's wondering, what did I just do? What happened? And then pretty soon the wind picked up. The wind came through the trees like that, and it went through that first hole, went through the second hole, went through the third hole, the fourth hole, the fifth hole, the sixth hole, the seventh hole. And then it came out, and it had this different tempo, different everything. And then he got so excited because he heard what everybody else heard. And so he went up to a different tree and he did it again. Made 7 more holes. So when you see woodpecker on a tree hitting his head against that tree, he's making a song. He's making songs. And so that's his job when he goes around springtime. That's his job, is to make those holes like that. So this is the song that goes with that story, and you can hear, I'll play a short rendition of it, but you can hear woodpecker, you can hear the different animal calls, you can hear, you know, the wind and all those.
That one part is like what a bunny might sound like running through the forest.
Yeah. So when we talk about, you know, because like rabbits are stealthy, but we have a story about how the rabbit dance came, you know, and the rabbit songs. So, well, there's a rabbit dance song that I can that I know how to play, and it's just you know, when you have your the beat, you know, it's just, you have your like your heartbeat, like kind of a thing, and then that song is um you hey yo hey ya ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey yo ya hey yo ha hey yo ha hey yo hey yo hey yo hey yo hi yo hey yeah hey yo hey yo hey yo hey yo hey yo yo hey yo ha hey yo ha hey yo hey yo. So like uh, that's like the rabbit dance song. So
There sound like.
we have so different like you know, like we have when we make that sound, you know, Like we
That's
throw
super
that
cool.
in there.
I wonder how much of their own instruments they'll be able to do that with, right?
And it's just like the creativity of
Mm-hmm.
what you can put down. Being creative. And being confident with it. That's one thing in my experience in my journeys is that um, it all ties into having that quiet confidence. It all ties into it. It ties into you as a person. It ties into what you can do individually. But it ties into because everybody's creative in some way, shape, or form,
Mm-hmm.
and when you connect them, when you connect those things, then it becomes something very unique. And like I said, like the woodpecker story, everybody has a unique song, and it hits people differently, and it hits people in a certain way. So um, it's not that he felt bad about himself. He felt disgruntled that he couldn't do
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah.
And one of the things that my dad and my uncle came up with when I was seeking advice and looking for comfort, worried about like what uh, people what they were saying about you,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, and it rings true,
Mm-hmm.
but they said if you start to worry about what people think about you, not say, but think. If you worry about what they think about you, then get used to taking second and third place. so
Right? Because
so
they're gonna put themselves first.
yep,
Yeah.
so it was just so
That's
other
interesting.
yeah
That's good.
so
That's good advice.
yeah so I if people have thoughts about me, I can't change their thoughts,
Yeah.
whether if they're good or bad. It's not up to me, it's up to that person. But you know and then the other part of it was, you know and I always reflect on woodpecker, but to know me is to like me.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like me, you don't know me. That's
Mm-hmm.
your problem, not mine. You know, kind of a thing. And so when I think about those things and those teachings like that, it's like I don't have time. I don't want to have time in my day for negativity and pettiness,
Mm-hmm.
But if it's there, if it comes my way, it's coming my way for a reason.